So, welcome everybody back to our interview marathon here on the Veil of Sound. And I'm very, very happy, not only that we're closing in on New Year's, but also to have a very special guest here on the show. I have Neal from Thief here. So, Dylan, thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
First, the usual question that we always have, and I see that you're wearing something that I am already interested in. What is the shirt merch of the day that you can show us?
Oh, this is this is a shirt of K.U.K.L. Um,
Yes?
uh, it was like Björk's art punk band before she even started the Sugar Cubes. It's like this really kind of avant-garde anti-rock thing.
So was that must then have been in between Sugar Cubes and that very first record she did with her father, right?
It was so there was that first record with her father, and then there
Yeah.
was Tappy Takaris,
Ah, yeah.
which is yeah, which means cork the bitch's ass, which is a great title. Which is it was sort of like a mm, not post punk. It's just sort of like this Brit pop. It's really great. She was a bit younger in that, and then she started K.U.K.L, which means witchcraft in Icelandic, and then she did Sugar Cubes, and of course her uh, eponymous Bjork project.
Yeah, I mean, basically, when we think about singing, I would say that that woman is untouchable because, one could
Yeah,
think of a music whatever you want, but the range she has, the intimacy that she can produce with her singing, I mean, that is
yeah,
unbeatable.
yeah. One of my favorites.
Good choice. Good
Yeah. Oh yeah.
choice. Before anybody asks, I'm sporting German avant-garde black metal Unru.
Oh, I haven't heard that. Let
Uh,
me write that down.
yeah.
Oh yeah,
If
send it.
you write, I'll send it to you. But you can also write down. It's very easy. It's like that is the name Unru.
Okay,
Uh,
good.
and it's a really, really cool project. They've been going for a long time, and politically on the correct side of the scope. Anti misogyny, anti xenophobia, always on the right spot, and musically a very, very cool project.
Nice. I like to hear it.
um yeah. And then I have to ask, first of all, Thief, why did you choose that name? I mean, you probably already told the story a million times, but I'm curious nevertheless.
You know, I don't get asked that much. I had no reason to pick it other than I just liked the way it looked when it was written, and I
Yeah.
liked
Okay.
the sound of it. It was purely just like aesthetics. I didn't know why I liked it. I just couldn't get it out of my mind. And at the time in 2016, there wasn't any other thief, so I was like, oh, perfect. Now there's like five other ones. So
Discogs even lists you as Thief 13, so there must have been others before, but
okay,
still.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but and it's also very open to interpretation of what it means to people. But in retrospect, now, I mean, I've had a lot of time to learn from it and explore what it means to me. And one of the things that I like to me is this idea of like thief nature, like
Mhm.
the part of us that wants to steal, and not turning away from that. It's not glorifying it, um, giving it space and serving it tea. There is this sort of antagonistic, if that's the word, side of it. It's sort of like a
Mhm.
shadow side thing. But then also I've learned, you know, I um, I'm I live and study at a Buddhist temple. It's a Zen Buddhist temple, and I didn't know this at the time, but I've come to know it now. And the Zen Buddhism mythology, the thief is a very important role. A great master they call like a great thief because he steals away your delusions and all your concepts, and leaves you with nothing left to hold on to.
Mhm.
So that's cool too that I somehow aligned with that.
I mean, like, of course, coming from a European and especially German background, one of the first things that I thought of was we have a saying here in Germany, which is like, you better steal well once than try to create badly twice. And
Yeah, I like that.
I thought about that. I mean, like, of course, that's nothing that you thought about when choosing the title, but could we also apply that a
That's a
little?
great motto.
Yeah. Could we also apply that a little bit to your music? Because you seem to have your fingers into so many things and you sample sometimes, of course, and you get
Yeah,
like film samples and stuff like that.
I
So
think that's
would you,
apt. Yeah,
yeah,
I think you're right. And that might have been in my thought process at the time. It's hard to remember, but yeah, I steal. I mean, I literally steal from like old vinyls and Gregorian chants and stuff. And also, like every artist, it's stealing. You're taking ideas that have influenced you and
yeah.
um, just putting your own twist on it.
And there is also something that I thought about, like, I mean, like that saying is like decades old. And I think that, it might hold more truth today than ever before, because when we look at music, I don't know how you think about it, but I mean, like most of the music, I would guess like more than 95% of the music that comes out nowadays is a kind of a mashup of things that have been there before, right?
Hmm.
I mean, like look at the charts.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
A lot is coming back. But and here we come to thief, and that's where I say like you're a good thief. I mean, like it's very hard to notice where you're stealing your ideas from, where you're taking some of the samples from. And that is something that interests me. Like, how long does it take for you to combine all these things into, let's say, one track?
Mm.
Not every, I know that you cannot say that for every track, but maybe something like on average.
Yeah. It really does vary. So, I mean, is the question how long does it take me to just finish a track?
Yeah, but maybe like from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, on average, let's say just getting it all the way to the mixing phase. So everything's
Yeah,
recorded, vocals are done, but
yeah.
it hasn't got the polish. Maybe a month, you know?
Wow. And are
Um,
you then
yeah,
working
I
on
think
several tracks at the same time?
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, I've probably right now in my folder on my computer for like, the next album, I maybe have 15 or 16 tracks in different stages of development,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm pretty ADHD, so once I'll get really focused on one and then I'll lose interest and I have to go to another thing, and which is great because it helps me really um, work quickly. And I can really hyper focus, but I have to shift that focus a lot. And some tracks come together in a week, well, I'll have most of it written in a week. Other tracks, they may have been sitting around in some form for 5, 6 years.
Yeah. I can
So it
imagine
really
that.
does vary. But yeah, if I would say just getting everything done, maybe except vocals and lyrics, maybe a month. Vocals and lyrics can take me quite a long time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Does your life in a Buddhist temple also help you with that ADHD that you've mentioned? Like calm down?
Yeah, yeah. Having like a pretty active sitting meditation practice helps my distraction, and it's not always
Yeah.
under control. Like a lot of times I'll work for 10 minutes and then I'm like find myself on YouTube or find myself on Instagram. And it's just like this I very easily pulled away. But over the years, I'm much more able to sort of hone in and focus on just the task at hand and sort of
Mm.
settle down the dialogue and the things pulling me away.
You're talking about things pulling you away from a dialogue. Would you describe your work as a dialogue with yourself?
Uh,
Because it's basically a one-man project, right?
yeah, yeah. With so when I'm just making the music and I'm not worrying about lyrics,
Mm-hmm.
I, it's not a dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's me just like the frontal lobe of my brain is totally turned off, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm just instinctually following ideas until one of the branches goes into another branch that keeps going, and all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden I'm 3 hours away from the original idea, and I'm like, this is great. I could have never thought my way to here, but it works.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I'm working on lyrics, that's often when I have to get a little more cerebral. Sometimes I've got to sort of be like, what am I saying here? What is
Mm-hmm.
this about? Or if I'm not clear, like, okay, what's the emotion that I want? What kind of imagery or words or references can um, inspire that emotion that I want to bring? And then when I'm in the sort of editing, producing, mixing phase, that's very cerebral too. That's
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm looking at, I'm working with EQs and compressors and referencing other tracks. It's very much like I think that's the Hemingway quote, write drunk, edit sober, so
Yeah,
it
I
works like
always
that.
like Hemingway, but yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah.
It's a good comparison. I came up with that question when I prepared because looking at your work and also especially at the last two records at the 16 Deaths of My Master and Bleed Memory, it seems as if you very often, I don't know if it's consciously, but there seems to be like a red thread going through a lot of these songs. I'm not trying to go into too much detail, but I know that the last record dealt a lot with dementia. So I
Mm.
was thinking, like, is that also, the dialogue with himself to 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 get that off his chest?
Hmm. Yeah, it is a dialogue, but I don't know if it's so much getting it off my chest. Maybe it is. I don't
Mhm.
think about it too much. Um, but it is a way of me just I think humans just want to tell their story or
Of course.
express what they're doing. And um, for me, I've learned that the most important part of that is like, and then you see it connect with other people.
Hmm.
And then my music becomes a much bigger picture.
Hmm.
It becomes less of a dialogue just with myself and
Hmm.
my own story, and then I see like my interconnectedness with how what I do affects and touches other people
Yeah.
and places
Yeah.
and things.
Do you also sometimes stumble upon other people's interpretations of your own songs where you say, like, I haven't thought about it that way, but that is totally valid?
Yeah, oh, all the time. Yeah, there's been a
Oh.
couple songs where to me I only knew the emotion it was kind of
Hmm.
expressing, and people told me their interpretation. I'm like, oh, that's what the song is about. Oh, wow.
Cool.
Yeah, and I've had
Cool.
that happen in interviews too, where someone has fielded a interpretation or just a thought, and I'm like, yeah, that's 100% right. I never consciously thought about that.
Mm. Mm. But you would not describe the overarching topics that you are creating, you would not describe that as some kind of coping mechanism. That's just something that happens on the way.
I don't know. It could be both. It is therapeutic, of course, to really lay bare like your intestines and just be
Mm.
like, this is my guts. This is how that
Mm.
does feel
Mm.
good. It does feel good to belt out that note that has some like anger or
Mm.
frustration or sadness in it. So yeah, I think there is a therapeutic aspect to it, but I'm not consciously seeking that or following
Mm.
it.
Mm.
Um, I really feel I I really just it just happens. I feel like I don't have much of a choice over it. I'm sure if I stopped doing it, if I stopped making music, there might be some sort of um uh I might start having fucking what's the like a emotional meltdown or something because I
Yeah.
don't have that, but I
Hmm.
haven't stopped yet. So,
Yeah. Something that also quickly came to my mind when I stumbled upon you a few years ago was the question whether you are a Renaissance man.
oh, what man?
A Renaissance man, one of those guys who tries to
Oh, Renaissance.
pull it. Yeah. Would you see something like that? Because I mean, like when we think about music you make, the inspirations you take, is there not
Oh, you
something
froze.
in there like that?
Sorry, you froze.
Okay, so when I think about the stuff that you come up with, I mean, like
Yeah.
there are some pretty Renaissance and some pretty Baroque ideas behind it. There seems to be a lot of thought going into it, and there also seems to be a high curiosity,
Mm.
which to
If
me are always good trademarks of somebody who I would apply that term to.
then if that's the definition, then yeah, I would agree. It's I don't I don't write thinking that those are the things that I want to do. It's
Mhm.
just sort of hardwired into me that that's the direction I go to. It's like when I think of particularly Baroque music, I don't think like, oh, for this, I want to do like a Baroque
Mhm.
voicing between these two
Yeah.
instruments. It just sort of is what I like the sound of and
Mhm.
happens, and um, sometimes it's not until later that I find out I'm doing things like that maybe I picked up listening to music somewhere or early music theory classes I took when I was younger or something.
Mhm. So maybe for the uninitiated, maybe you can describe that that inspiration you take, for example, from Gregorian music, when looking at Baroque orals and also probably musical compositions. How deep does your love for it go? And how do you then apply it to botanist? Not botanist, sorry, thief. We'll come to
Um,
botanist in a moment, of course.
yeah, yeah, yeah. My love for it runs pretty deep. I remember when I was, I don't know, I was maybe 12 or 13 and on some music, Napster or Kazaa or Soulseek, I don't remember. I downloaded something that said it just said dark Estonian chant and I was like, "Oh, what's that?" And it was Errol Kert.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it just completely floored
Is
me.
he Estonian? I always thought he was Finnish, but anyway,
No,
okay.
yeah, he's Estonian. And that's where it started for me. Uh and I just consumed as much as I could. I got all the CDs that the local CD shop here had. Um, I tried to understand the music theory behind it.
Mhm.
Tentenabulum is what he calls it. Um, but my music theory is not that great. So my technical knowledge of how it works is rudimentary, and enough to sort of, if I wanted to, I could kind of copy the voicings. But
Mhm.
um, and then now today I still do it. I collect it a lot. I have just, probably 50, 60 vinyls of just sacred chant music. Um, I forgot this other part of your question.
No, but you've already gone into like how do you then apply that
Ah,
onto Thief's music? How does this transpond?
right. So, let's just say nowadays I'll go to the record store and a lot of times it's like, the used dollar bin because there's not a lot of new ancient vinyl chant music being made. So I'll buy a bunch and then I'll just put it on and I'll record, I'll record it on my computer. And as I'm listening, I might be like, oh, that was a beautiful movement. Those like four notes and the way the voices sort of, you know, did vibrato or just legatoed into the next one. And so I'll just make a note that that part was really cool. And then maybe right away or maybe in a couple days or something, I'll just go through the vinyl that I recorded and then find that place and then just sort of mangle it and stretch it a little bit so it's in a loop that maybe a 4-bar loop or whatever makes sense,
Mhm.
and then I'll just sort of like jam with it with myself. I'll get my guitar or a keyboard or oftentimes drums, and just sort of see what it pulls out of me. Um, it might just be like a 2-note bass line, but I really like the way that those two things happen. And
Mhm.
then again, and then I start following these ideas everywhere. Like, oh, what if I added this? No, that's no good. What if I did this? I love that. What if I did this? That's really, and then
Mhm.
just very sometimes quickly, it just sorts of blooms out from this one little maybe 3-second piece of music, that I sampled. And then and then I might take more from that record, to fill out other spaces, or I might take something from somewhere else completely, or often I will just use that 3 second loop over and over and over, but in lots of different ways. I
Mhm.
might pitch it up and down or stretch it so it's really, you can't even tell it's voices. It's just sort of
Mhm.
like this ambient
Mhm.
floating feeling. And yeah,
Sounds like a hell of a fun thing to do.
it is.
Um, and I still do, I know that I couldn't do it, but it sounds like really fun.
Yeah.
You've been speaking about the drums. That is, of course, something that is quickly noticeable in your music. It has a certain kind of, for lack of a better word, danceability.
Uh,
Probably not consciously, or is it something that you enjoy making people dance?
I don't like to dance. I hate dancing. It's
Yeah, but
never
it's a
been
question whether you like seeing people dance.
right. Yeah, I like seeing people dance, but that's not my intention. It's just
Hmm.
sort of like what gets my head moving,
Yeah.
and
Ah, okay.
it's not traditional dance. Yeah, it's just sort of what makes me do this, and it's not traditional dance. It's not like four on the floor. It's
No, no,
more
no,
like,
no, no, no.
I think it's like when it comes to that, all the electronic music I listened to growing up and still today, like Aphex Twin and Clark and Square Pusher, it has that element of like, it's all based on early electronic dance music, but just pushed to its limit. And I don't see too many people dancing, but I see people moving, and
Yeah.
I think that's great. And I think that is a mission, not a conscious one, but it's a reward. It's saying like, oh, this worked. People are feeling this.
Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, like listening to your music, I think you would have to be an emotional rock not to be nodding your head, tapping your feet, or like moving something else.
Yeah,
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 definitely. Um,
yeah.
Also, something that struck me when I thought about again the project name, Thief. It's very, very hard to pinpoint you to a certain genre, and I would not, for the life of me, try to do it because I'm very
Uh,
sure you don't try to set out doing it. But what I've noticed when looking up, some of the reviews and stuff, there are people from very, very different shades and genres, from electronica to black metal, from choral music to dance aficionados. And most of them can agree onto your music, can say, like, okay, there is something in there that I definitely like. I guess that's something that makes you proud, isn't it?
yeah, I would say so. Uh, it sort of uh, confirms to me that I'm setting out with really one of my original intentions was to make something that was new sounding. And I think when you have a new or different sound, um, people find something that they're familiar with in it, but is different to them.
Hmm.
And it's a double-edged blade because that also makes you hard to categorize, which makes it harder to sell or harder to find like your market or your scene or whatever. But we can blend in with, we've played with a lot of metal bands. We've played with a lot of, electro, more dancey bands, dark wave. Uh, yeah. But yeah, it gives me a feeling of satisfaction.
You have just mentioned the marketing problem
Mm,
or also possibility. I think it's both actually. The marketing for a project like Thief, which I guess can be pretty difficult. But how
mm.
happy are you that you have a label behind your back, which seems to know nearly no limits?
I like that Prophecy literally lets me do whatever I want. Like I don't have to run anything really by them. I can just
Mm-hmm.
say, hey, like I want to do this, or hey, I did this, post it,
Mm.
or something. I really like that, and I like that they work hard for me. I do feel like um, the one limiting factor of being sort of unlimited is that they're it's just one part of the market. I don't know if I'm explaining
Yeah.
it well.
I,
It really does not. Yeah, I'm not sure how to explain it. So I'll just say, yeah, Prophecy's great. Um, and it's unlimited in their world, if that makes sense.
yeah. I mean, like, of course, it's not a label which will enable you to sell, let's say, 10,000 copies of a new record.
Not yet,
No, of course
but
not, because you
but
will
you have
get
a
them
band
there.
like you have what's that?
You will get them there.
I hope so. Yeah. I mean, if
Yeah.
you're a band like Alcest, who they had, I think they
Yeah.
were
Okay. Yeah.
doing quite
They definitely.
quite near
But you
that.
know what I mean? Like, it's not a six-digit number record label which sells like 50,000 copies of every record.
Right.
Same time, when looking at their roster, interestingly, and I don't know if you've noticed that, but this year they had a second band on their list of publications, which does a similar thing than you do. And I would love to see a collaboration. There is this Italian band called Camerata Mediolanense.
Oh, I don't know
They,
them.
they work, I'll send you a link in our chat in a moment. They work similarly to you because they take stuff from the 16th, 17th century.
Hmm.
They also come up with songs from that period and they then transfer them into a new kind of post-punk meets world music kind of thing.
Mm,
That is something where I think that is something that Prophecy is really good at, is
mm,
covering stuff that, you know, we all would have to dig very deep.
yeah. Martin, the who is Prophecy, who started Prophecy, it's sort of said in paraphrasing that it's sort of a home for the outcasts or the black sheep or the more strange ones, which I think is true. I mean, you have us, but then you have bands like Silencer and Bethlehem who are very um kind of outsider black metal
Yeah.
music, and then of course they have more like mainstream um darker music and stuff too, but
Yeah.
they really do a good job in finding and nurturing these stranger, smaller bands.
Yeah. When we talk about other bands, there is a band that we have to mention in the context of Thief, and that is Botanist. You have done a split with Botanist. Maybe you explain how that came to happen.
Yeah. I mean, the I was backpacking in 2007, I think, and I was in Sweden, and I found this. There was like a museum of instruments or something, um, and I went in, and they had a dulcimer, and a hammered dulcimer, and I never played one. I don't know if I'd seen one before, and you could play on these instruments, and so I played it, and I was like, "Man, this is amazing! I love this. I want to when I get back home, I want to see how hard it is to find these." And as soon as I got home, I found one right away. Some guy was selling his wife's that she never used, and I bought it for $300-400, and I started playing it, and I really loved it. And soon after that, I discovered Botanist. And but they had never played live before. They,
Mm.
meaning Utrebor, who is Botanist. Utrebor hadn't played live yet. And I was reading an interview with him, and the interviewer asked if he'd ever considered playing live, and he was like, I'd love to, but where am I going to find a dulcimer player that likes black metal? And I was just like, that's me. That's that's me. Hello, here in the
Here I
back.
am. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I found his email somehow, and I emailed him. Uh, I'm in LA, and he's not that far. He's in San Francisco. Um, maybe a 6 hour drive. And we just started talking, and eventually, I can't remember what happened from there. I think we met up. He was traveling here, and we became friends, and then I told my friend Robert, who was drumming in a band I was in at the time, about this um, interaction, and my drummer goes, "Oh, I love Botanist," and I was like, "You know Botanist?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I told Ochibor that. He got all jazzed. So then Robert bought a dulcimer, and we just started playing some of the Botanist songs, and very soon we had assembled a touring band. And then uh, a, I wrote all the dulcimer then for a Botanist album called The Shape of He to Come. And then I left Botanist just to focus on Thief.
Hmm.
Um, and then when I finished the 16 Deaths of My Master, our third album, I had a bunch of tracks left over that I really liked, but they didn't quite fit on the album. And so I knew that Otribor of Botanist just has tons and tons of unreleased material. So I was like, hey, if Prophecy wanted to do a split and we could both just unload some of our songs we really like that
Hmm.
haven't fit anywhere, would you be down? And he was like, yeah, of course. And, Prophecy being Prophecy was like, that sounds great. Um,
Mm.
and so we just talked a bit about it, about the name and maybe like aesthetically the concept. And yeah, that was that. And then, I'm still unofficially in a member. I don't tour with them and I don't do much else, but every now and then I do write for them. About 6 months ago, I wrote like a 10-minute dulcimer track to some
Mm.
drums he made. I have the dulcimer now, and I'm writing now for another song. So he hits me up now and then to collaborate on a track, but it's hard to focus on any other band when you're running your own band and you
Yeah.
have like a day job and all of that.
Mm. I just wanted you to tell that because, I'm sometimes unsure how much I can give away. And I think this personal combination between thief and botanist, once again, also somewhat in some way shows your approach to music. I mean, like you play an instrument, a hammered dulcimer, which, come on, let's be honest, it's not really a 21st century instrument.
Yeah, that's true.
So again, you take something from the past, transpond it to the present. Again, cool thing. Um, and can I say that music has no boundaries for you?
Yeah, I think that's what is important to me with music is that um just exploring new and weird ideas. They might
Mm,
not always work or people might not like them, but that's what's exciting. That's what's like the frontier of music. Um,
mm,
I have been in a couple bands where we're not writing anything really sonically challenging or anything, and it's fun, but it doesn't quite feel fulfilling to me.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like I've discovered like this very precious thing that I want to show people,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And botanist, that's one of the things that I really gravitated towards also is like this is so fucking weird. This is I've
Yeah.
never heard anything like this, especially the early botanist. Like the first 3 or 4 albums were just so unique and alien and cool. Um and I really respected what he did, which is why I was like, hell yeah, I wanna play with them.
You just dropped the adjective cool, but I'm very sure that that was not one of the important things for you, right?
No, no. I mean, cool for
Uh,
me is
yeah,
describe
yeah,
yeah, interesting,
yeah.
or new. It definitely is not cool in the cool sense of, what's a hot in the metal world or whatever.
That's true. I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah, botanist would never appeal to the majority of metal listeners for
No.
for many different reasons.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why Botanist is great and I respect them is in the spirit of black metal, you go against the grain. It's always
Yeah,
been that way.
yeah,
As soon as death metal got too polished, bands like Dark Throne or whatever were just like, no, we need to make this raw. That's where the emotion is.
yeah.
Um, or it's just seeing what everyone's doing and just sort of being the bratty teenager and be like, no, I'm going to do it another way because
Hmm.
I want it to be different.
Yeah, yeah. And then even within black metal, like even within black metal, that is again a very niche thing that he's doing.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that idea. Coming back to you and to you creating sounds that then move into songs. Very often we also have some female vocals on your records or maybe samples. For me, it's hard to distinguish whether that was sung for the record or whether you choose to sample. But how do you choose the voices, the intonations? Do these, if they sing explicitly for the record, do they write their own lyrics? How much do you influence that band?
Hmm. Well, thus far, all the female vocals are samples.
Cool.
So they're taken from whatever record, like the female vocals on the track Pyromancy
Yeah.
um, are from a old record from like 1970s of an Indian woman singing the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
Uh, and yeah, and so I just heard that and it just sounded so beautiful.
Mhm.
And because I'm a thief, I guess I was like, well, I'm gonna take that for myself
Mhm.
and manipulate it so it can
Mhm.
work within whatever idea I had brewing, which for that
Mhm.
song I remember I think I had already had a loop of this very like fuzzed out bass line
Mhm.
and some drums and I just made it fit into there. Yeah.
What strikes me right now as we're talking is, isn't your approach somewhat similar to the way that DJ Shadow does it? Trying to sample the hell out of everything you get?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um I feel akin to him in just the way he was one of the first, the OGs,
Yeah.
and to really
Yeah.
I think he was literally the first person to make an entire record out of
Yes, he
samples.
was. He
Yeah.
was.
So,
Introducing is the first record ever to completely consist only of samples. Yes.
right, right. I think that's amazing. So yeah, there is some kinship there. I like playing instruments and putting my very own music in it
Yeah,
and just using the sort of sampled choir stuff as a backbone,
yeah, yeah.
as a background. But yeah, his work was his method and ability was a big influence.
And of course, you both share the hobby of crate digging, right?
Yeah, although people like him and oh, I can't remember his name. I mean, those guys are encyclopedic and just ferocious about their crate digging.
Yeah,
I maybe have, I don't know, maybe 200 records. Those guys, I mean, they have rooms of wall to
yeah, yeah,
wall records,
yeah,
records. And they can just think of what they want and they know where it is.
yeah.
They really have this sort of Rain Man-esque relationship.
But I think there is also probably something of that in you because I mean, like we very often talk about photographic memory.
Hmm.
I'm very sure that there is also something like an audio graphic memory, and I think that that applies for people like DJ Shadow and others, of course, to the max. But I'm pretty sure that you also, at least in some ways, must have something like that.
I don't know.
Anyway,
I
yeah,
don't
you
see
go.
myself as having it. I'm very forgetful, but I also try to be really detailed when I
Hmm.
catalog stuff. So if I record a vinyl that I got and there's a part that I like, I will
Hmm.
say like music monks chant 16th century 32 minutes and 33 seconds has a really cool section. That'll be the title of the file
Yeah,
so that
yeah,
when I
yeah,
see it, I know it's there. Yeah, but if I had to go right now and look at my collection and find a piece that was in a certain scale, I couldn't do it.
yeah. Okay, okay. By the way, something that I wanted to ask at the beginning already when we were talking about the Buddhist temple. Um, do you also use Buddhist chants for your stuff?
I don't think I have yet. I think I did for the first time for the ambient set I did at Prophecy Fest.
Hmm.
They had me do and so I made a whole new, like 40 minutes of new
Hmm.
music. And I think for the first time I used Buddhist chant and that Tibetan throat singing. But I don't think I have, I could be wrong. I'd have to like look at the track list
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
because sometimes there's so many samples, but I don't think I have. And I would guess that one of the reasons is it's difficult to sample because
yeah.
just sometimes it's very monotone.
Hmm.
Ba 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 ba.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's hard for me to work things out. Or so or sometimes it's really really outside of like an equal temperament.
yeah. Hmm.
So getting it to work with traditional instrumentation can be quite difficult.
Hmm.
That was the case for pyromancy also, to bring it up again, because she's that Indian style singing is very, I mean, there's just so many notes within notes.
Yeah.
They have
So
so
many
many notes.
varieties, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so there's so many in between notes between the notes you and I think sound good.
Hmm.
And that took a lot of tweaking. If you played the actual record, it would sound a little different because I did have to do some like pitch adjustment
Hmm.
so that her, E flat sounded like my E flat.
But let me guess, that is also something that you highly enjoy doing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. At the time it can be really frustrating.
Yeah.
Um, and requires like a lot of creative problem solving because a lot of times you can make it work but it'll just sound like shit.
Hmm.
Or it'll be so obviously adjusted or something and it doesn't
Yeah.
sound natural, but especially once it's finished, you're just like, ah, it's perfect, I love it.
Yeah. Probably very rewarding, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
I like that approach. And as I said, I could never do that myself. Never
Mm,
for the life of me.
mm.
But I like the approach. Dylan, first of all, thanks into the detailed description of your songwriting process, of your approach to music. But nobody, and also not you, leaves the Veil of Sound interview without having to go through the infamous quickfire round at the end. You will always get two alternatives, have to choose one of them, and give a short explanation.
Okay.
You see how often I've already said this. You could probably wake me at 3 a.m. in the morning. So let's start off with something easy. I'll give you two songs by
Okay.
Depeche Mode.
Uh-oh.
I'll give you Master and Servant and Walking in My Shoes.
I literally don't know what either of those sound like. If you if you
Yeah.
sung it, I would probably know, but as much as have people telling me that Thief sounds like Depeche Mode or reminds them, I I only know them from the radio.
You know why I chose them? I
Why?
chose them because their soundscapes, if I blended them together, I think there would be a lot that you would like. I'll send you the links to both songs. Because, for example, I know that for Master and Servant, they went along doing a lot of field recordings outside in Berlin. And
Uh,
for Walking in My Shoes, they did a lot of tweaking and twisting of tuning and guitar stuff. So I think that would be something where if we put it together, it would not be Thief, of course not, but it would have similarities.
yeah, that makes sense. And it makes sense because I mean, more people than I can count tell me that, they hear the Depeche Mode influence. I'm like, thank you. I just never listened to them really.
Well, maybe it's a good decision because
Yeah.
maybe sometimes I think if somebody tips you off onto something and maybe again shows you something that you hadn't thought of, maybe it would influence you too much, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The next two you've already dropped yourself: FX Twin versus Square Pusher.
Aphex Twin. No
Would
doubt.
you have would you have a specific go-to record?
Drux. The
Ooh, yeah, I
DRU
know. I
AQS.
know, I know. DRUQS. Yeah, yeah. QS, KS? Or whatever.
Yeah, I think
But I
it's
know which one you mean. It's the one which has something on the cover which looks a little bit like a typewriter thing.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
a prepared piano, and then he wrote Aphex Twin on it. Yeah, that album that's one of the albums that completely changed my music world, and yeah.
Don't ask me why, but I came that with in my twisted mind. Cold Cave versus Drab Majesty.
I never listened to either, but
Yes.
so I
Okay.
so I'll say Drab Majesty because I saw them live once at some festival here, and I thought they sounded great.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think I've ever really put either of them on. I never got too deep into post-punk darkwave stuff.
What might be interesting is the biography of the guy behind Cold Cave,
Mm,
because initially he was in one of the most influential hardcore bands of the 21st century.
which
He
one?
was uh, not Give Up for Ghost, or was it Give Up for Ghost? It was Give Up for Ghost. Give Up for Ghost slash American Nightmare. So for him turning from that into like synthwave stuff,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
post punk, that is something where I said like, okay, was it? No, it wasn't Give Up for Ghost. What was it? Shit, Wes Isolt was in not American Nightmare. I have to look that up. For everybody out there who's trying to stone me now, yes, please do so. You've mentioned the next woman already at the
Yeah.
very beginning. So Björk, Medulla versus Homogenic.
Oh, that's hard.
It's not for
Um,
me.
Probably
Being a
homogenic.
little older than you, for me, it's not difficult.
Yeah, probably homogenic. What about
Yeah, for
you?
me, it's homogenic, of
I
course.
love Medulla, and I'd say that's the last Bjork album I was fanatical about.
Yeah,
Um,
me too.
and it's just so creative and interesting, but homogenic is just a fucking classic.
For me, there is even post before that where I said, okay, that would even be above that. But again, it's the way, which record is the first one you got by an artist. And for me, it was Post. So
For me, it was Post too. Yeah.
yeah. But
My mom gave
Homogenic is Homogenic is. I think if I had to die on an island with one electronic record, which I'm not a big fan of anyway, I'm still the guitar-driven guy. So if I had to pick an electronic record, it would be Homogenic, probably.
Yeah, that's a good pick. Mine might be. I think Vespertine is my favorite Bjork, but Homogenic might be. Homogenic or Post might be number 2. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with the next 2 bands, but there is something in your stuff that is hitting for me the same kind of mood. Portishead versus Massive Attack.
Portishead. Love both of them, but Portishead is they're masters. The third album is one of the greatest albums ever made.
Yeah, and it's a very misunderstood record.
Yeah. I mean, songwriting and all of that amazingness aside, the production is so good. It sounds so good. Oh, yeah, it's great.
And it was also a great record in a great package. I still remember getting that. Yes. Yeah. Something very, very, very different. Offer and Punisher. I'll give you 2 records. K.U.K.L, the last one, versus Drone Machines, one of the earlier ones.
I think K.U.K.L. Yeah, I think that's the one I like the most.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally agree. That when it came out, that was my album of the year. And it came out very early that year. I still remember that. And it was never beaten along the way.
That one has some like choruses that are so good that are like soaring. And I was like, this is great songwriting. Besides it sounding cool, which Drone Machine does, of course, also.
Yeah.
I think K.U.K.L has the superior songwriting.
Yeah. By the way, if anybody wants to find out a little bit more about Tristan and Offer and Punisher, go back to our archive. We did an interview with him, 2 years ago? Something like that.
We played a show with him once.
And I can imagine that would be an awesome combination. Yeah,
it was great.
Bring that to Europe.
Oh, I would love to. If you've got a line to his ear, let him know. We're down.
Yeah, I think at the moment he's writing new material, so it would take a little while.
Yeah.
When we talk about black metal, we've already hinted at it, that there is still a love in you for black metal. I'll give you 2 couples. First one, Panopticon versus Wayfarer.
Never listened to either of them. I'm a huge black metal fan, but I will admit, like, I'm a early. There's not a lot of new black metal bands.
Okay. Okay. Then I wanted to give you Fantifex F versus Krallice, but that then probably
Krallice wins that. Krallice, I know Krallice. My drummer is obsessed with Krallice, so of course I've heard so much of it. Krallice is great.
Yeah, that is one of those bands that changed a lot of ears.
Yep.
2 more. Billie Eilish versus Charlie XCX.
Billie Eilish. There's a couple.
Yeah, you go ahead.
There's a couple Charlie XCX songs I like. Sympathy is a Knife, I think, is one of the greatest fucking pop choruses I've ever heard. But I never go back to it. I only listen, it's just something I heard and I wanted to hear. But Billie Eilish, like, I think she has a lot of great songs.
Yeah. Definitely.
Unashamed.
Yeah. That's not both are neither artists that I listen to on a regular album basis, but stuff that you definitely can listen to when the daughter is listening to stuff,
Sure, yeah.
And as you've mentioned, sampling and, stuff like that, I hope I got that right, but sometimes I have a feeling as if you also sample from movies, right? like word passages?
I don't think I have. I think the only time I sampled from a movie was for the Cinderland music video,
Okay.
which
Anyway, you live in LA, and I wanted to give you two LA movies, and you choose which one seems more appropriate to you.
okay.
Chinatown versus LA Confidential.
Chinatown.
Nicholson?
Chinatown, there there is this vibe I think it gets that there are powers that be are um pulling strings people are not aware of, and that
Yeah.
there's an underbelly that exists, maybe even because of it. Also, it's great. I mean, Jack Nicholson is just phenomenal in it.
Yeah, it's also one of those. It's one of those movies from this period of Nicholson's oeuvre, of his body of work, where he basically didn't do anything wrong when it comes to
Mm.
movies. I mean, like privately, I'm very sure we don't want to know everything that he did in his life. I still like that line that where he, in one sentence, includes his dick and cocaine, and I'm like, oh shoot, no, please no.
Yeah, man. Him and what's his name who did Chinatown. I mean, they probably, I mean, they do suck as people, but I can still appreciate the art. I'm able
Yeah,
to, but
yeah,
I don't fault anyone that can't, you know.
yeah. So as I said, like that is one of those movies with one of those periods, where you say like, okay, that actor didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, one flew
Dylan.
over.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Yes, of course.
so good.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean like classic American movies of the 60s and 70s. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I know that Stephen King didn't like his version of Shining, the one that Kubrick did.
Ridiculous. So good.
Yeah. Yeah, as a movie, it's awesome. But when you compare it to the book, I can understand King. But
Mhm.
I mean, like King's version of the book, he made a new movie himself, and that one just sucks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, like, nah, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for
Yeah.
me. Probably also because I have Nicholson's image of Jack Torrance in the back of my mind, and it just
Right,
doesn't do it.
right. Yeah, the movie also, the book is a lot about alcoholism, and the movie doesn't quite capture that as much.
Yeah.
Um, but it still does. Jack kind of loses his mind and after he takes a drink, in the bar with what's his name. But it's a little more obvious in the book.
Yeah, the book it's definitely more obvious. I forgot the name of a bartender. I'm getting old.
Oh,
I have to rewatch it. Um,
yeah.
Dylan, thanks for all the detailed answers. Thanks for all the insights. But I chose for, Christmas time. The last words of everybody in this marathon should be your favorite Christmas song.
Oh, what the hell is that song called? Bum, 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 bum.
Isn't that Saint on the feast of? Yeah, 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 yeah. I know what you want. It's also in a movie. Um,
I think it's in Home Alone. No,
I,
you know
I
what it
think.
is? I like the one name I can't remember. That's like da na 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 na
Yeah, that
na
is
na.
Home Alone. That is Home
Yeah,
Alone.
okay, yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dylan,
I,
thanks for your time.
yeah, no problem. Sorry, I didn't know fucking half the bands you asked me to choose
Hey,
between,
that's
but
that's okay. I'll give you something to think about, and I'll send you a few links in the chat, and then
I would love
everybody
that.
can think of which bands is he gonna send. So
Yeah.
Dylan, enjoy the rest of your day, my friend.
Awesome. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.